All right, let's talk about love. Today, we are going on a journey through the super complex world of modern relationships. We're going to deconstruct the whole thing, from that first little spark of attraction all the way to what it actually takes to build a connection that lasts. And we'll be using some real insights from psychology, research, and data.
So how do we even navigate all this? From the endless swiping on dating apps to the quiet comfort of a long-term partnership, what does science actually have to say about what makes relationships tick? Okay, let's dive right in. So our journey starts at the very beginning, attraction. That mysterious, sometimes super frustrating initial pull. Turns out it's a mix of biology, psychology, and as we're about to see, it's kind of a paradox.
When it comes to attraction, it's fascinating. There's this big gap between what we say we want and what really catches our eye. So if you ask women, they'll consistently say they value things like kindness and intelligence. But as a popular Reddit psychology thread points out, a lot of researchers agree, for things to even get off the ground, there usually has to be some kind of initial physical attraction. It's not about being a supermodel, but that first visual spark, it's often the gatekeeper.
Okay, so you've caught someone's eye. Now what? What's the secret to actually building a connection? Well, check this out. A Harvard study found this simple but really powerful tool. And forget trying to be the most clever or funny person in the room. The key is to just ask more follow-up questions. It shows you're actually listening and you're interested, a trait called responsiveness, which people find incredibly attractive. And get this, in speed dating situations, it actually boosted the chances of getting a second date.
So how does that initial attraction turn into, action? In our world, making the first move often means running the gauntlet of dating apps. And as we're about to see, that comes with a whole new set of challenges.
Whether you're online or in person, starting a conversation can be totally nerve-wracking. But experts say there's a simple 3-step way to do it. First, use a disarming question, just something easy and low pressure. Then, second, just let it be natural. It's a conversation, not an interview. And third, use some light humor and a positive tone. Be flirty, not creepy. The goal here is a connection, not just checking off boxes.
And this brings us to just how powerful these apps can be. Swipe pandemic might sound a little dramatic, but a recent survey found that a shocking 90%, that's 9 out of 10 singles, feel like they're addicted to dating apps. That endless possibility of matches, it creates this feedback loop that just keeps us scrolling and scrolling. Sometimes, and let's be honest, it's not always great for us.
And while we're navigating this digital world, safety has got to be priority number one. Experts from the Times of India have a pretty clear checklist. Protect your privacy. Don't share your phone number or your exact address right away. Be careful with how many personal photos you're sharing, and keep details like where exactly you work private until you've actually built some real trust.
Okay, so you've made a connection. Now comes maybe one of the most confusing parts of modern dating, the "what are we" talk. Are you just casually seeing each other, or is this actually going somewhere?
And a really common setup in this phase is the whole friends with benefits thing. The textbook definition is clear, right? It's a physical connection without the emotional strings of a traditional romance. But the reality is usually a whole lot messier.
And this is where the science gets really surprising. A lot of people just assume that a relationship that starts out as friends with benefits is basically doomed to fail. But a study from 2012 found no convincing evidence that starting out that way really affects how well the relationship works later on if you do decide to get exclusive. It kind of challenges a lot of what we think we know.
How we handle all of this often comes down to our psychological blueprint for relationships, which is called our attachment style. So people with a secure attachment style, they tend to have happier relationships. But on the other hand, people with insecure styles, either avoidant or ambivalent, are way more likely to have issues, with research linking them to just less positive interaction as a couple.
Which brings us to the next big step in our journey, moving out of that weird, ambiguous phase and into a real, committed partnership. And this is where the real work of building a life together actually begins. And it takes a very specific set of skills.
So to understand what makes a partnership work, it's actually really helpful to first look at what makes it fail. And the legendary relationship researcher John Gottman identified 4 communication patterns that are so destructive, he called them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. The first one? Criticism. And that's different from a complaint. It's a direct attack on your partner's character.
The second horseman is defensiveness. Oh man, we all know this one. It's that knee-jerk, "it's not my fault" reaction, where you instantly play the victim or try to flip the blame when you feel attacked. Instead of hearing your partner, you're just making excuses, which completely shuts down any chance of actually solving the problem.
And then there's the third horseman,
Contempt. And this one is the most dangerous. It's when you attack your partner's sense of self with sarcasm, mockery, or name-calling. It's just mean. And Gottman's research found that this is the single greatest predictor of divorce. Period. And the final horseman is stonewalling. This is when a partner gets so overwhelmed that they just withdraw. They completely shut down and emotionally check out of the conversation. For their partner, it feels like talking to a brick wall.
So, what's the antidote to all this? How do you fight off those horsemen? Well, a successful partnership is really built on two pillars. You've got the emotional side, things like communication, trust, respect, forgiveness. But the practical side is just as important. We're talking about having open conversations about money, about your shared goals, and even updating boring things like estate plans after you get married. You absolutely need both.
And that brings us to the final test of a relationship, its ability to actually last. This means knowing the difference between a healthy argument and toxic red flags, and really understanding what gives a partnership real staying power. Understanding the difference between healthy and toxic conflict is everything. In a healthy conflict, the mindset is a team effort. It's you and me against the problem. Partners try to de-escalate things. But in a toxic conflict, it's a battle. It's you versus me. It usually starts with aggression, and there's a total refusal to accept any influence from each other. Some red flags, though, they point to something much deeper. Psychology has a name for a group of personality traits called the dark triad. This includes psychopathy, which is a total lack of empathy, narcissism, with that huge sense of grandiosity and entitlement, and Machiavellianism, which is all about being cynical and manipulative. And the manipulation from these traits can be so subtle and so damaging. A really common tactic is something called mirroring. And listen to this quote from Psych Central. It's pretty chilling. A person might pretend to share all of your hobbies and values, not because they want to connect, but just to gain your trust so they can get information to use against you later. So after this whole journey, we're kind of left with the big question of modern love, right? In a world that is so full of strategies and mind games and very, very real red flags, how do we protect our hearts, but also keep them open to the possibility of a real deep connection? That right there, that's the ultimate balancing act.